Moving ahead, the second type of important domain which we want to talk about is the mobile domain. Mobile domain is very important because mobile has now become the inseparable part of our life. So everybody is carrying mobiles, everybody is using applications. Most of the websites have converted themselves to mobile applications. You can go ahead and just install the applications and see them. You have e-commerce websites, you have security applications, you have gaming applications, you have multiple applications running on the mobile devices. So mobile domain under ethical hacking is also a major process, and we need to see that how those application works. We need to analyze how the whole process works and then develop the security for the same. So there are four main operating systems which are used today for mobile devices. The first one is Android, which is the top one. The second one is iOS, the third one is Windows, and the fourth one is BlackBerry. So these are the four major operating systems. So as an ethical hacker, it's your job to understand what is happening with these operating systems. What are the different entry points under these operating systems? What are the different exploitation points under these operating systems? There are some operating systems which are exploitable. If your mobile device is using an Android version of 3.4, then that is exploitable. You can run multiple attacks on top of it. If your mobile device is running Android 4.0, again that is exploitable. We have multiple attacks which could happen on Android 4.0. So you need to understand and see what could happen with these different operating systems. So if you take the example, we have just showcased you the Android operating system here. So as an ethical hacker, you should have a basic understanding of how the whole application framework is running. Currently, it's a very simple example where we have divided the whole Android base into four different layers. You can see there is an application, then application framework, then we have libraries and Android runtime on the same layer, and finally you have the Linux kernel. Under Linux kernel, this is the core of the Android devices, and this is going to run some of the core functionalities. So you can see we have a keypad driver, Wi-Fi driver, camera driver, audio driver. So all the drivers are present. This is more of like a motherboard for your Android device. Then we have the libraries which will help us to safeguard our Android device and also run some kind of functionalities. So you have all the Surface Manager, SQLite, WebKit, SSL, OpenGL, all these different kinds of libraries are present with here. And you also have the Android runtime, where basically you are extracting the core libraries for the Android and also the virtual machine system for running the multiple applications. Then after this, you have application framework. Application framework is how you are going to build your applications. There are multiple frameworks which are present under the Android device. So some of them are activity manager, window manager, content providers, resource manager. So all these three different frameworks are provided. And finally, you have the applications. So you will have the home application, browser application, some kind of confirmation schemes, monitor application, some gaming application. So all these things might be there. So this is just a very base example for you guys to understand that how the whole Android system works. But if you go into the detail, if you go into the whole process of ethical hacking, you need to just understand the basics and the overview of the everything which is present under Android system, because there could be multiple entry points for the same. Moving ahead, some of the types of Android attacks which could happen on the Android application. The first one is the untrusted APKs. So Android, whenever you are building the applications, the extension for the application is APK. So untrusted APKs are the ones which are not listed by Google under their Play Store. And if you install some of the untrusted APKs, it could be a possibility that you are actually giving your access to the hackers or the attackers. So you are actually making your system vulnerable. The second one is SMS, which is the most common one. So SMS is the thing that you receive a SMS, you click on the SMS, suddenly a file will be downloaded onto your Android device. This file will be downloaded in the background. Once you log in into any kind of financial application, let's say you are using Google Pay, you log in into the Google Pay. So what this file is going to do, this file is going to just process the request behind your applications and then send a transaction to the server. Server will think that this is the request which is coming from you because you have a current session with Google Pay, and he will going to process the request, and then the money is transferred to the other person. This is also known as CSRF attack, which is the cross-site request forgery under Android devices. Then you also have email. The same thing with SMS. You receive an email, you click on the email, script or a file is downloaded, and then the script and file download kind of takes the transactions and runs on top of it. So how this kind of thing work actually, let's say the SMS or the email functionality, how the whole thing is working. So if you have Amazon Prime subscription, so you will notice that suppose Amazon Prime is sending you an email which is coming from Amazon-Prime. So what the attacker is going to do, attacker is going to actually change this. Attacker is going to send you an email from Amazon.Prime. So as a normal user, you won't even notice that this is the small change which is made. And once you open the email, that the attached file for the script will be downloaded at your end, and then that script is going to execute some kind of malicious code on top of your machine. Then after this, we have spying. Spying is also a one major thing which is currently happening with most of the mobile devices. I remember one example. There was a case on a company based out of US, and this was a marketing company. And what they used to do, they used to do the marketing campaigns on different mobile devices. So they have the tie-ups with different mobile devices. And what they normally did, that once you install their app, their application keep on recording your microphone. So your microphone is always open because you provided the access to the microphone to the app. So your microphone is always open, and it keeps on recording the microphone input which is coming from your end. The main motive for that application was to actually record your background settings. So let's say you are watching a television, what that application was doing, that application was actually recording the microphone, so it was also recording the voice which was coming from the television, and through that voice they were trying to analyze what kind of advertisements a user is going to see. So through that they were running their marketing campaigns, because now they have much more analyzation of how the data was actually coming to their system. So that's one of the major attacks which could happen, the spying attack, which is related to that they are trying to spy on you, they are trying to monitor you, what you are doing, how the things are happening. For our example, they were recording everything which you were doing, and through that they were able to analyze what kind of ads do you watch and what kind of ads do you skip, and then they devise their marketing campaign accordingly. Then we also have the app sandboxing issues. There are sometimes that you are developing an app but you are not sure about how the whole process works. So sandboxing the apps also provides some kind of vulnerabilities in the system, and if you are doing that, you need to make sure that your whole account is safeguarded and the proper security is provided. The final one, the one of the major attacks which normally happens, is related to rooting of Android devices. Rooting of Android devices, basically that you are trying to access some kind of kernel features. So normally under Android devices you don't have access to the kernel features. So what people usually do, people try to access the kernel features, and through that they try to overclock the Android devices to increase the speed. It's something which you do on the desktops and laptops too. You try to overclock them to make sure that your laptop is running fast or the desktop is running fast, and the same thing you do on the Android device. So rooting is also one of the main issues, because if you access your kernel features and if there is some vulnerability, then the attacker can also access your kernel features and then he can take over your device. So that's also one of the vulnerabilities which commonly happen under Android. So one example of attack which is a very common one, and this is the attack is related to tab jacking. So you might have heard about clickjacking. Clickjacking is that you are clicking on a link, but the attacker is actually changing the URL of the link, and you will click on the attacker's link and then you will direct it to their websites or their page. So that's clickjacking. Tab jacking is more on the mobile devices, where you are tapping on the mobile screen. So you are tapping on the button that you are going to win, but what is happening behind that, that actually you are tapping on a transaction or some kind of internet banking, where you will click on the pay and then the whole transaction will be executed. And how this tab jacking occurred, so in Android devices, this happened in Android 3.4 as far as I remember. So there is a thing which is known as screen overlay. You guys might have heard about, and this is basically that you can listen to the taps using screen overlay. So this is a concept under Android, and you can easily listen to the taps if you are using the screen overlay. Then the second one is known as Toast. So the second feature under Android, this is known as Toast. So what is a toast? Toast is the small notifications. You might have seen that once you open the Wi-Fi or open the Bluetooth, suddenly a small notification pops up that the data is saved, picture is deleted, Wi-Fi is open, Bluetooth is open. So those kind of notifications are used to come across. So what is happening that this toast, which is present on Android device, this is time bound. So it will show, then it will just disappear. But under Android 3.4, what used to happen that the attacker was able to actually remove the time boundation from the toast. So what he used to do, that suppose you click on a picture and then delete that picture, so suddenly a toast show up that this picture is deleted. Then what the attacker was doing, that he was removing the time boundation and he was actually increasing the screen space for this whole toast. So this was the thing which was actually happening with the system. So once this was happening, what was going on, that as a user, you used to think that this notification is actually disabled. Now I am not able to see this, but this toast is already open with the screen overlay. And once you just tap on it, this will directly take you to some other website or some other link which is bounded by attacker. One of the common ways of how this screen overlay thing works, that let's say what attackers used to do, that they have taken over your screen space, they have installed the toast and screen overlay attack on top of you. So what they will do, they will open the app which is related to some kind of financial transaction, and there you have the pay button, or let's say the transaction button. So what they are going to do, on top of that pay button, just below that pay or transaction button, on top of that pay or transaction button, they are going to just put up your toast and screen overlay. So suppose you start up a game and you are playing the game, and there is a button for playing that game. So you click on that button for playing the game, but actually what is happening, they have done the tap jacking and they are redirecting you to pay or submit the transaction, which will be executed, and then the money will be transferred from your account. So that's a tap jacking kind of attack which happens on the mobile devices. Let's go ahead. The next important domain for us is the network domain. Network domain is much more hardcore compared to the previous two, because previous two are more related to the application end, but the network domain is more related to the servers or the application side. And network domain is more of like that the attacker or the hacker is able to get the unauthorized access for your organization server or network. There are two major attacks under network domain. One is the passive one, other one is the active one. So passive one is where the attacker gain access to the network, and nobody can able to monitor or see what they are trying to do. So they will steal your sensitive information, but they will never leave a track or a trace behind that. I showed you in the previous class also, the day one class, where we did a passive search. So in the passive search, the Windows firewalls were not able to log in those different things which we were trying to do. And the active one is more towards that the attacker are directly going and accessing your system, modifying the data, deleting everything, and harming your system. And you can also log them inside logs, but they do the whole process very fastly, and you can see what is happening. So something like running a ransomware or running a malware or something like this. So you open your laptop and then a ransomware just pops up, something like a WannaCry. You guys might have heard about WannaCry, which is an active type of attack. So WannaCry, yeah, this one. So here you can see this kind of pop-up or this kind of image will pop up on your computer, which will say that your files are encrypted and this is the time limit you have. So you have to provide some kind of money to them to make sure that your files are decrypted. If you don't provide the money, then your files will be encrypted permanently, because they are going to delete the key through which the encryption has happened. So this is one of the attack which is more up towards the active side, where they are directly attacking you and threatening you that you need to transfer the money to them. So passive and active attacks. Now coming to the different types of network attacks, some of the common types of network attacks are related to endpoint attacks. Endpoint attacks are gaining the unauthorized access to the user devices, servers, or other endpoints. So it's more related to that you are infecting them and getting the authorization. So we saw in the previous day one section also how we actually attacked the FTP server, and then through that we try to get the username and password for the FTP and get the kind of like access to the FTP. So that's an endpoint attack where I am actually getting the access of the system. Malware attack is after the endpoint attack. So once you gain the access of the system, now you are going to compromise their system. Now you are going to do some kind of damage to the system. So that's under malware attack. So WannaCry also worked in the same method, that they try to search across whatever the ports for a laptop is open. Once they figure out the ports, they will install the whole software for WannaCry on top of the laptop. Once that is done, then they will fire up the attack, and which will come under the malware attack. So that's the main thing. Endpoint attacks, gaining the authorization. Malware attacks, actually now you are doing some kind of damage to the system. Finally, there is vulnerability exploit and attacks. So vulnerability is that we have some known components in the world which are vulnerable, and if we are using those components, we are actually exposing our system to different kinds of attack. One of the known components is SSL 3.0. So if you are using the previous version of SSL 3.0, you are actually exposing yourself to the heartbleed attack. Heartbleed attack was a major one. So vulnerabilities is mainly related to that you have some vulnerable components, and if you are using them, you are actually exposing your system to different kinds of attacks. So there are many vulnerable components. I have just given you the example of SSL. It could also be related to cryptography. Let's say if you are using a DES algorithm, which is data encryption standard, again you are exposing yourself to attack. It could also be related to FTP. If you are using VSFTP, that is one of the versions for file transfer protocol, and that is also vulnerable. If you see VSFTP 2.3.4 exploit, so you see there is already a lot of information related to this version of exploit. So there are many things which happen with the system, and if you are using them, then you are actually exposing your system to different vulnerabilities which are present in the security domain. So one final kind of attack is the advanced persistent threats. These are much more complex kind of attacks under the network attacks. So here what normally happens is that the attacker who has attacked your system will actually leave some kind of backdoor within the system, and nobody is able to track that backdoor. So what is going to happen, that the attacker is going to attack the system again and again through that backdoor. So it's more of like a multi-layered attack. So he will try to do different layers of attacks on the system, and you won't be able to figure out what is happening. So the first time he went in the system, he just tried to delete some files. Second time he went in the system, he encrypted the files. Third time he went into the system, he tried to add some new files. So that's a multi-layer attack which could also happen related to the advanced persistent threats. So one of the examples for the attacks for network security is DDoS attacks. So DDoS attacks is an attack which is mainly related to denial of service. This is the attack where we try to make the server down. So that's the main background for this attack, that we are not actually trying to hamper or trying to take out the information, but what we are trying to do is that we are trying to stop the server. So if I give you an analogy for this, let's say I call to a pizza shop. So I call up to a pizza shop. Currently I can't do that, but let's just take the example that I call up to a pizza shop, and in the pizza shop I tell them that I want to order everything which is available in your menu. And then when he asks me that, then I also tell him that I want to order everything from your menu, but what I want that you call me back and repeat me the order, and then I give your number to him instead of giving my number. So what is going to happen, that the pizza shop guy is going to call you up, and then he's going to repeat all order to you. And that is the DDoS attack, that instead of providing my source, I have provided your source, and then the whole attack is happening on your end. And this is very common, which happens under the user datagram protocol, UDP protocol. So there is a difference between TCP and UDP. TCP is used for normal communication, UDP is used for real-time communication. Why we use UDP for real-time communication? Because UDP doesn't have the process of authorization as TCP. So we are not going to authorize. So I don't need to provide my IP address to UDP. So what I can do, I can go ahead and provide your IP address, and if you are using UDP, the whole system might attack you. And this happened on GitHub. So there was that GitHub was using memcaching. Memcaching uses UDP behind their system, and they were receiving almost like trillions of requests per minute, and that was very heavy, and their servers were down for a long time. So that's just an example of DDoS attack. There are other domains under ethical hacking. So if we talk about cloud computing, so you need to figure out as an ethical hacker what are the different ways that your virtual servers or virtual computers or firewalls and other systems could be protected. Then we have IoT. Again, IoT is mainly related to smart devices talking to each other. So how you will provide the security, how you are going to exploit the vulnerability and develop some kind of security for the same. Then we have blockchain, which is a much newer one, and where we try to see that what are the different ways of how the systems might hack. You might have heard about it that the bitcoins got stolen or ethereum coins got stolen. So as an ethical hacker, it's your job to see and protect the systems that those are not being stolen. And finally, we have edge computing. Edge computing is more towards your Netflix and Amazon Prime, because edge computing is related to that you are providing the resources at the person's end. So how edge computing works, let's say if you're watching Netflix and you are watching it sitting in India and the servers are located in US, then the whole communication from US to India is going to take time. But what edge computing is going to do, edge computing is going to see that you are locating in India. So what it's going to do, it's going to take the data from the US servers and bring it to the Indian server, so you are directly able to watch that. So edge computing is also one of the main process where you need to see that how that data is being transferred from multiple locations, and you need to figure out how the whole process works. So let's just go ahead and see one of the demonstration now. Just for one single domain, we are going to see a web application demonstration for SQL injection. Try to understand what is happening with the system. So I have this system with me. Let's just open this. And here inside the system, I have just one login and password box. So I'm just giving you a very small demonstration regarding how the SQL injection will work. So just I have a login and password box. So as an ethical hacker, now you need to figure out what is happening with the system. So the first thing you're going to do, as I told you before also, the first thing you're going to do, that run the happy cycle. Let's try to run the happy cycle and try to figure out what is happening, how the functionality works for the system. So I go ahead and try to run admin and admin. So login. Okay, so let me just log in into this. All right, so let me just open that again. So try to run first the happy cycle. Let's try to provide admin and admin as username and password. So I see that there is invalid credential. So I'm not able to figure out much from this. Second thing, what we are going to do, we are going to try to see URL, errors, console, and cookies. So try to see what is happening with these four major things. So let's try to see the URL. I'm not able to see much what is happening in the system. Let's try to see the errors I'm getting here, just invalid credentials, again not much. Then if I try to see something else, let's say I try to just open the web developer console, and there I will try to open let's just open this web developer, then go to web console. I try to see the console whether I'm getting some kind of error. No, I'm not getting any error. I go to the storage, I try to see the cookies. I'm getting something. No, again I'm not getting anything. So till now I'm not able to understand what is happening with the system here. So next thing which we are going to do, next thing you are going to do is that try to see the page source. So I go ahead and try to see the page source here. What is happening here? There are multiple things you can record under page source as an ethical hacker. You should focus on three major things. The first one is going to be different files. The second one is going to be scripts and CSS, and third file is going to be your input tags. So always focus on these three major things. So what I will do, I will just focus here that this is the script which is running, this is the CSS here running. Then I will also try to analyze this, that what are the different files which are present. So we have portal.php, password.php, all these files are present here. And finally I'm going to go ahead and see what is happening inside my input boxes. So I will try to see that what is happening within the system and how these input tags are working. So currently I'm able to see that input tags are fine, the file structures are present. I can note down these file structures and run some other attacks or try to exploit them too. I can see scripts and I can also go ahead and run the scripts. So try to gather the information as much as you can, what is happening with the system, how the system is working. Now the fourth step is always dependent upon your different exploits. So here we are talking about SQL injection. So for SQL injection, the fourth step will be different. For a cross-site scripting attack, the fourth step will again be different. So it always depends upon how you are exploiting it. So for our fourth step, for SQL injection, there are 6 major kind of characters which will help you figure out whether this login page is exposed to SQL injection or not. So try using these 6 characters. The first one is this one, second one is double quotes, third one is this one, fourth one is this one, fifth one is this one, and sixth one is this one. So these are the different characters which you should try to run a SQL injection. So this you can also go ahead and see in the cheat sheet, but for now just understand that these are the characters which will help you to see the SQL injection. So let's try the first one. Let's try to put a single quote here and add the admin here. And once I do that, you see now the error has been modified. There is a new error. It states that you have a SQL syntax error. So from this, I'm able to figure out, okay, now this is running a SQL query behind it. So this login and password is running a SQL query. So what is the SQL query? Let's try to analyze this. In my view, this SQL query could be something like this: select star from users where login is equal to admin and password is equals to again admin. So this is the SQL query which is running right now. So this is just a general my view. So what I need to do to break the SQL query, what I need to do is that I need to make sure that this login is true and this password is also true. So let's try to do that. Let's try to build something which will actually help us to break that. So what if currently I am running this single quote here and this is able to break the system. Now I know that there is one more single quote present here. So I need to make sure that the whole sequence of this step is in a way that this is a correct select statement or a correct SQL statement. So I add one more quote here. So now I have 2 quotes, login equal to blank, and this is also coming as blank. So now what I do, I want to make this as true. So I can use 1 equal to 1 here. So here I go ahead and provide or, and here I try to now add something here. So let's add 1 is equals to 1. Now again I see that the quotes are not matching. So I remove one extra quote which I have added before. So now instead of using username as admin, my username is changed to this one. So from this, what I come to notice that login equal to blank or 1 equal to 1. So this is a true statement, and password equal to admin. Again, I need to make this also true. So I just take this one and provide this here. And now I'm able to see that the password is also true. So let's try this. Let's take this and try this in our login here. Let's try this and click on login, and now you see we are able to log in. So what has happened? It has taken the first user, because this is a true statement. So if I'm running a true statement, what is going to happen? This is going to give me back the first row of the table from the users table. So it is giving me back the first row, and through that I'm able to log in into the system. So it's giving me welcome Neo, and I'm able to break the system through this. So this was just one demonstration for SQL injection and how SQL injection works. So why are applications a target? Why mostly people target web applications? The first thing, the web applications are very easily available. If I just go ahead and Google search, I will get a lot of website. If I put in any domain name and put a .com, .org, .co, or any other different kinds of suffixes with them, then again I can get the website for the same. So these are easily available. Second thing is, these are always running. So they are always present 24/7. You will see that website is present, be it any type of website, be it google.com, be it your internet banking, be it your great learning website. Everything is already present 24/7. You can always go ahead and access them. You can always see what is happening and what kind of functionalities these websites are hosting. Then the second thing is that most of these websites also host mission critical business applications. So if I go into google.com, they have gmail.com, they have Google Docs, they have Google Drive. So all those different things are there. Or they also have the Google Cloud Engine. Similarly, Microsoft also have Azure, they have Outlook. So there are some mission critical businesses which are actually dependent upon the applications. Your company might be using Gmail for transferring the emails. You might also be using Google Cloud for setting up a web application. You might be using Azure for running some kind of machine learning algorithms. So most of the mission critical businesses are already present online, and web application is the front end view for the same. Then the third thing is that they are often directly accessing the backend data. This is one of the major things which I have seen in most of the organizations, that the developer, when they are coding the applications, they actually don't safeguard the different parameters which are being passed between database and the web application. What they do is that they directly put in the code as such where you are directly accessing the data. So yesterday you saw one example related to SQL injection, where the front end itself had the code for accessing the name and password, and that's why we were able to run the SQL injection there. So that's also one of the target points for us. Finally, some of the different services are using traditional firewalls and SSL services which are not protected at all. I told you one example about the traditional firewalls. If I try to do a nmap search using a stealth scan, then the traditional firewall won't be able to notice it that I'm trying to do this. Similarly, if you are using SSL 3.0, then again the attacks could take place where they can just go ahead and run some kind of heartbleed attack and try to gain the information from you. So if you are using traditional firewalls and SSL, it again creates the problem there. And then all the applications which are available online, they are custom based. So it's not like we are perfect. We will make some kind of mistake, we will leave some kind of vulnerabilities present, and that's the main case that most of the web applications are targeted, because there are some entry points present which the attacker is able to figure out, and then through that they're able to target the web applications. Coming to our scenario, what we are going to do, we are going to run across through BWAP. What is BWAP? BWAP stands for buggy web application, and this is an application which is deliberately made insecure. It includes all the different types of vulnerabilities. If you talk about HTML injection, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, if you talk about OS command injection, PHP injection, base encoding, every kind of vulnerability is already present with BWAP. And we are also going to use the same to learn about the different vulnerabilities, try to hack the application, and then try to see what kind of mitigation techniques could be presented with the application. And this helps the security developers, students to discover and prevent different kinds of issues. So it's more of like a practical way of you for you to learn about different kinds of vulnerabilities. So once you go ahead and try to do the attack by yourself, you will then figure out that what is the defense point for the same. So it's more of like the attack is the best defense, and you try to do and create the scenario, run the simulation, try to see what is happening, and through that you will understand that now how should I build the defense for the same. So that's the main thing. So after this, we are also going to see about BWAP, about different vulnerabilities which are running with the BWAP. And BWAP is also one good tool for running the penetration testing. So if you are running an ethical hacking project, if you are running a penetration testing for any kind of product, BWAP could be kind of like a resourceful application available to you. So you can just refer to different vulnerabilities and see that how different vulnerabilities are accessed using BWAP, and then you can try the same on top of your hacking projects or penetration testing. So that's why we are also going to see that how this BWAP works. So this is just an example page for BWAP, just the home page for BWAP. So they have a very simple home page where you can go ahead and choose the bug, click on hack. Here you can set the security level. Mostly 3 security levels are available with BWAP: low, medium, and high. Low is something where you are learning the whole process of ethical hacking and cybersecurity. Medium is something that now you are familiar with the processes and the security, and now you want to spend some time to see how the whole process works. And hard is something where you are in quarantine, you have a lot of time, and you just want to try out the things by yourself. So it might take you days to actually go ahead and do the hard kind of vulnerabilities. So that's just the portal for this. So a brief about BWAP. So the architecture which BWAP is following right now, BWAP is built in open source PHP application. So most of the pages are built in PHP. On the back end, BWAP is using MySQL database. So all the different SQL queries, if I want to try it, if I want to see what is happening with the same, I can go ahead and do the same. Then this BWAP application is available on both the ends. You have the Linux one and the Windows one. So you can go ahead and try to see that whether they are hosted on the Linux and the Windows one with IIS. And for now we are using the the Linux environment with the Apache server. So the current BWAP architecture which we are following is taken up with the open source PHP application. The backend language is PHP. The database is MySQL. It is hosted on the Linux environment with the Apache Tomcat server, and we are supporting the XAMPP server. So XAMPP and WAMP is more of like a sandboxed environment for you, and they provide you everything with your application. So XAMPP is basically that you have Apache, you have MongoDB, you have PHP, and you have other things associated with this. So we are using the same here.